The lonely rancher stared across the vast fields, the wind tugging at his worn hat. Life on the ranch had always been quiet, almost too quiet, and the emptiness of the days weighed heavily on him. Then, one afternoon, a shadow fell over the farmhouse. A giant bride, taller than any person he had ever seen, appeared at the edge of the property, her eyes bright with curiosity. The rancher felt his heart race. He had never imagined anyone like her would arrive in his small, secluded world. Tentatively, he waved, unsure if she could even hear him over the distance. To his surprise, she smiled and slowly approached, each step causing the ground to tremble slightly. When she finally stood before him, towering yet gentle, the rancher felt an odd mix of awe and comfort. Her presence was commanding, yet there was a warmth in her gaze that made him feel less alone. "Welcome," he murmured, unsure if the words felt enough. She nodded, crouching slightly to meet his eyes, a playful glint in her expression. For the first time in years, the rancher felt that life on the ranch might finally hold something unexpected and magical. The next morning, the rancher woke to the sound of birds and the gentle creak of his old windmill. He rubbed his eyes and stepped outside, only to find the giant bride already wandering through the fields, her enormous hands carefully inspecting the crops. She moved with surprising delicacy, and the rancher couldn't help but marvel at the contrast between her size and her gentle demeanor. "Good morning," he called, trying to keep his voice steady. She turned, smiling down at him, and gave a small wave. The rancher noticed how her laughter, deep yet melodic, seemed to fill the air around them. It was strange to feel so connected to someone so different, yet somehow natural. As they walked together along the edge of the property, he realized how much he had missed having someone to share the simple routines of ranch life. She asked questions about the animals, the crops, and even the old stories his father had told him about the land. Each answer he gave seemed to delight her, and her enthusiasm was infectious. By afternoon, they were tending the fields side by side, and the rancher felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. The loneliness that had defined his days began to lift, replaced with curiosity, excitement, and a hope that perhaps, with her around, life could become an unexpected adventure. Days passed, and the rancher found himself growing accustomed to the giant bride's presence. She had a way of noticing things he hadn't thought about in years, the way the morning sun hit the haystack, or how the creek's water shimmered differently depending on the angle. Her curiosity made him see his own ranch through fresh eyes, and he felt a spark of joy he hadn't felt in a long time. One afternoon, a sudden storm rolled in, dark clouds sweeping across the horizon. The rancher rushed to secure the animals, but the wind was fierce, tugging at his coat and threatening to topple the smaller structures. He looked around, panic rising, when he realized the giant bride was already moving toward the barn, lifting fallen gates and steadying the weaker fences with ease. Her strength was astonishing, but so was her calm determination. Watching her work, he felt both awe and gratitude. He had always been self-reliant, but she reminded him that some challenges were easier when shared. After the storm passed, they stood together, mud on their boots, wind in their hair, and laughter escaping their lips despite the chaos. For the first time in years, the rancher didn't feel alone. He felt like they were a team, ready to face whatever the world might throw at them, together. With the storm behind them, the rancher and the giant bride began to settle into a rhythm. Every morning, they worked side by side, feeding the animals, repairing fences, and tending the fields. She asked endless questions about the land, the seasons, and the old ranching techniques he had learned from his family. He found himself explaining things he hadn't thought about in years, and her eagerness made even the most mundane tasks feel exciting. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, they paused near the creek to rest. The giant bride bent low, so her face was close enough to meet his eyes, and they shared a quiet moment watching the reflection of the sunset in the water. The rancher realized how much her presence had changed his life. Her laughter, her curiosity, and even her gentle teasing had begun to fill the empty spaces he had carried for so long. They started sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes, and their dreams. For the first time, he felt truly seen, not as the lonely rancher, but as a person with a life worth sharing. The giant bride listened, genuinely interested, and in that simple connection, he discovered a warmth that went deeper than companionship. It was the beginning of trust, friendship, and something more tender, slowly growing between them. Weeks had passed, and the ranch had never felt more alive. The once lonely rancher now moved through his days with a sense of purpose and joy, his world brightened by the giant bride's constant presence. Together, they had repaired fences, planted new crops, and even created a small garden near the creek. Her laughter echoed across the fields, a sound that had become as essential to him as the morning sun. One quiet afternoon, they sat on a hill overlooking the ranch, the wind ruffling their hair and the horizon stretching endlessly before them. The rancher realized that the emptiness he had felt for so long had been replaced by a connection that was rare and extraordinary. He glanced at her, noting how she was no longer just a visitor to his world, but a part of it, someone who had changed the rhythm of his life in ways he could never have imagined. She smiled down at him, and in that simple gesture, he felt an unspoken understanding between them. Life on the ranch was no longer just about survival or routine, it had become an adventure, full of laughter, trust, and companionship. In the quiet beauty of that evening, he knew that his lonely days were behind him, and a future filled with shared moments and unexpected joys was just beginning.